We are live now.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before we start tonight, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some of our associates in the town of Normal for the exemplary work that they have done, and that would be the members of the Children's Discovery Museum. Earlier this month, the Illinois Association of Museums honored the Children's Discovery Museum team with its 3 top awards for 2020. They got all 3 of them, which is amazing. So let me give you a little background on those. I will say, I think a fair number of the museum staff are listening tonight and here to receive acknowledgement from us on this award, because it really is incredible what they've accomplished. The first was an award of superior achievement for COVID-19 response. The whole museum family won this award, staff, volunteers, and the board. Every single person at the CDM worked beyond their typical duties to build and deliver more than 10,000 STEAM-based activity kits to individuals in McLean County. They also created e-learning programs to supplement public school programs and reimagined events and exhibits to serve more than 40,000 people in 2020, despite being closed. Award of Superior Achievement for Best Practices in Educational Programs. The award-winning program is called Innovation Institute. The program is funded by a grant from State Farm and it is a partnership with Illinois State University and the Unity Community Center, pairing ISU science education students with teens from Unity to create STEAM-based learning opportunities for kindergarten through 5th grade students. Jenny Raisback is the project leader on that one. So congratulations, Jenny and all. The third is Shelley Hanover, who is named the Museum Professional of the Year for the entire state. After 26 years of hosting roundtable work groups for children's museums across the Midwest, she helped activate this important support networks during COVID-19. Together, the group established best practices for reopening and shared resources to keep serving families and schools despite the statewide shutdown that we experienced and with the Children's Museum. So staff joining us tonight are, and our thanks to them, Beth Wisman, Shelley Hanover, Rachel Carpenter, Jenny Raisback, Aaron Weiss-Reichert, John Dolan, Sammy Kern, Amy Pitzer, and Abby Boggs. Incredible, incredible work under very, very trying times. Thank you so much for what you've done for our community. Keep going. You're doing great work. Call to order a meeting for the Normal Town Council for Monday, February 15th, 2021. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos,
Here.
Mr. McCarthy,
Here.
Ms. Cummings,
Here.
Mr. Nord,
Here.
Ms. Smith,
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Here.
Mr. Preston.
Here.
We'll begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have one person in tonight for public comment, Mr. Ron Ulmer. So if you would bring Mr. Ulmer in. Good evening, Mr. Ulmer, and whenever you're ready.
Before we do that, Mayor, can you?
Oh, yes, I did forget to do that, didn't I? Before we go, Mr. Ulmer, I have to make this statement. The governor has issued a disaster declaration related to public health concerns caused by the statewide COVID-19 pandemic. As mayor, I've determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the risk of exposure to the COVID-19 virus stemming from an indoor gathering, and that a remote meeting is in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the council, the staff, and the general public. And now to you, Mr. Ulmer. You're on mute. Mr. Omer, you're on mute.
My comments tonight are regarding the Maxwell Park improvements. Paving over green areas at parks to add more parking spaces results in cognitive dissonance for the citizens. With all the millions of dollars spent on walking and bicycling trails that are used both for recreation and transportation, it is oxymoronic for the town to encourage driving to the place of outdoor recreation and exercise that contribute to a healthy lifestyle. Why not just have a small pickup and drop off area should park users have sports equipment, picnic supplies, or those with limited mobility? Normal already has plenty of pavement. Green space makes urban areas more attractive and improves the quality of life. Additionally, Normal has goals to reduce vehicle use as much as possible by designing road diets and adding bicycle lanes that will reduce driving lanes. More parking spaces encourage more vehicle usage. Similarly, I noticed the new Arts Center on Vernon Avenue has parking spaces, yet the Parks Department has a large parking lot just around the corner on Linden Street. I thought that one of the amenities of this site was the secluded ambience and easy access from Constitution Trail. Thank you.
We move on to the omnibus agenda items that will be considered with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. And seeing none.
I got my hand up.
No.
It's not showing up, Mr. Nord. Did you click the participant hand up? You don't have to do it now. I've got you. Ms. Smith is first, and then we'll come to you, Mr. Nord. You're on
Ms.
mute.
It's contagious. I did have some questions for clarification I wanted to put on the record about the Maxwell Park grant project. So I'd like to pull item F.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you. I'd like to pull item B, D, and E.
B, D as in dog, and E. Thank you. Motion for approval, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Items considered under omnibus are approval of the minutes of the budget work session special meeting on January 26, 2021, and approval of minutes of the regular council meeting of February 1st, 2021. A resolution to accept bids and award a contract to Stark Excavating Incorporated for the Green Street Culvert Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $862,923.73. And a resolution approving an amended site plan for Heartland Community College, 1500 West Rab Road. Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. Those items are approved. Item B is a report to receive and file town normal expenditures for payment as of February 10th, 2021. Mr. Nord?
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you. On PDF page 11, under administration, city manager expenses, there's an expense for Uptown Circle Development, 2020 expense recon for $6,210.94. Ms. Reese, I had emailed a little bit with you on this one. I understand this is for kind of common area expenses. But one other question that I didn't get answered was, does this include property taxes, or is that a separate charge that'll come through?
No, there is no separate charge for that, Mr. Nord, that all of the outstanding expenses that are reconciled every year would include common area expenses. And that package includes maintenance, upkeep, property taxes, insurance, and probably a few other things that I might not be remembering, but it's all identified in the lease agreement. Every year this is reconciled. Some years there's a credit, and this particular year there's an amount that's due.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had.
Further on the bills? Please call the roll.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The report to receive and file is approved. Item D is a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement with Republic Services having to do with the Bloomington Transfer Station for transfer and disposal of solid waste collected by the town. Mr. Nord?
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Nord?
Ms. Reese, there was a alternate bid that was provided with this. And when I read the alternate bid, it said that it was, there was about a 8% savings if we were to go for a longer term contract, longer than 2 years. What was the reasoning behind not investigating, or did you investigate a longer term agreement to kind of capture those savings?
Yes, we absolutely did. We certainly reviewed all the details of the bids that were submitted. I have on the call Mr. Comfort from the Public Works Department and Mr. Brown, the solid waste coordinator, and to answer the questions about this. The bids were reviewed with our partners, the City of Bloomington, on this project. So, Mr. Comfort.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so one of the main reasons for not going with this longer extension or this extended 10-year contract was mainly we're not really comfortable getting into that long of a locked-in agreement. Right now, there's some discussion with other vendors in the area that are looking to set up a transfer station. By locking ourselves into a 10-year agreement, we're kind of pricing out any other vendors from being able to set up in the area. That was really the main reason that we didn't go for this option. Also, it really wasn't per the specs that we were looking for. It was a pretty significant contractual change. And so for that, both our partners with Bloomington also deemed that this was a non-conforming bid. Michael, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add.
I think that's generally the gist. Only really to add that the solid waste plan that was approved by Normal, Bloomington, and McLean County, the 2017 plan, one of the strongest values that was kind of expressed in that collaborative process to get us that plan was interest in increased competition, just in order to essentially help save the taxpayers money. And so the reality being that we do see competition, coming on the horizon, that, is part of this as well, that locking into 10 years would definitely rule out, any competition for that foreseeable future.
And I will add on to that, Mr. Nord, for council's awareness, the proposal that Mr. Nord is referencing, he asked for separately. It's referred to on packet page D-3, where it says Republic Services also submitted an alternate proposal, but it indicates that this proposal was not considered, so it was not included in the packet.
Was there any negotiation done to try and reduce the number of years and still save the taxpayer some money?
No, because the way the current contract is set up is a 2-year locked with then the option for 5 years in 1-year agreements afterwards. So we have the option really for 7 total years here, with the option to be able to, either party get out after 2. So
And-
that's the same exact contract we currently have that we're ending here at the end of the month.
And it certainly does minimize the risk because as indicated by Mr. Brown and Mr. Comfort, we believe that there's likely to be additional competition in the not too distant future. So it would make sense to try to rebid this down the road.
Has there been any discussion to see if it's like how feasible it is that there's actually going to be competition and that the taxpayers are going to save by us waiting? Because this is, like I say, it's over an 8% discount that we have. So, in a couple of years, we've got to be able to recoup all that back. And if there hasn't been a negotiation with the vendor, I'm questioning why we don't negotiate, see if we can't meet in the middle somewhere. So that way taxpayers win, and then you still have the opportunity, if somebody decides to come in, that they can compete.
Well, Mr. Nord, this is a formal bid process. So we are, certainly following procurement requirements and want to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So we're following the formal bid procurement. But the other thing I'll indicate is I guess this just should be used as our incentive to make sure people recycle more. If we can minimize the waste going to the landfill, then we all win.
Well, whenever we did the recycling contract, that was a 3-year term contract. This is reduced down to 2.
With an option to extend. Mhm.
Yes, I would just request, and I guess make a motion that we table this so you can negotiate, see if you can find somewhere in the middle so taxpayers can save and we don't have to raise their garbage rates, because we've got an 8% savings on the table right now. And even if they cut it in half down to 4, then we're not looking at a garbage increase.
Well, Mr. Day, I guess I can defer to you. We could potentially ask the city of Bloomington if they'd be interested in rebidding, but I'm not comfortable in trying to go out and negotiate when we already have a formal bid. So I guess I'd ask council to reject. Mr.
Sure,
Day,
but
your thoughts?
there's only one bid. It's not like we're reopening this for other people.
Well, no, we put it out, the bid went out with certain specifications that they had to meet. So the alternate bid didn't meet those specifications. You can't put out a procurement document saying you have to meet X, Y, and Z. And if somebody doesn't decide, well, we'll negotiate with you anyway. I mean, the proper approach to this would be, we'd have to reject the proposal and send it back out and give everybody else the same chance at negotiating that this vendor has under the changed circumstances.
And if I may insert as well, just it's fairly clear to me, the intention of the vendor is the long-term commitment, that is what they're looking for. And so I don't know that there's much room for negotiation. Just as, solid waste coordinator for the town, the city, and the county, we've discussed these kind of things with this vendor, as they are, a long standing provider in the community. And so it really is my understanding that it's a long-term commitment they're looking for. So I'm not sure that they would come down in length of the contract very, very much.
Is the vendor on the call?
No, they're not.
Okay, so then, again, since we don't know, and if we can save taxpayers so we don't have to raise their trash bill, again, I'm going to make a motion that we table this until you can talk with the vendor. And if they say no, then it comes back before us.
I'll accept the motion, Mr. Nord, although it's fraught with legal issues in terms of how we do our procurement. Is there a second?
Wait, before we do a question, I
You
just
made a
want
motion and I've
clarification.
asked for a second, Mr. Nord. We're not having a discussion at this point.
Well,
Do we have
this is
second
a
on that?
legal clarification because you brought up a legal matter. Mr. Day, is there a
Mr.
legal
Nord, you're out
route?
of order. Mr. Nord, is there a second? The motion fails from no second. Further, Mr. Nord?
Yes, Mr. Day, is there a legal route, a legal process that we can reject this and put this out without bidding it, just like we have done with many contracts where we waive
Mr.
the
Day,
bid process?
Mr. Day, do not answer that question. The motion failed for lack of a second. Do you have other issues with this?
I would just like the record to show that my question was denied to be answered, and this is a fiscal matter. So thank you.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
I've got my hand up there.
Oh, sorry, Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah, I just, to level set, I wouldn't support tossing out our procurement policy. I'm actually kind of surprised by the motion. We've talked a lot about our procurement policy and making sure that we're following the rules, and this process clearly did. And I just want to underscore a couple of things here. There's no indication that the vendor would be willing to change. And as a proponent of local competition, I think this is actually a smart move on part of the city of Bloomington and the town of Normal to be looking into the marketplace and understanding that there's a potential new vendor, and to be looking out for that, because ultimately in the long run, if there's more competition in our community, frankly, the taxpayers will get a better rate. So I'm supportive of this as is. Thanks.
Ms. Smith.
For clarification purposes, when the town issues a formal bid, an RFP, they're constrained by dealing only with the bids that are submitted in response to that come back in, that satisfy the terms of the request for a proposal, that come in under deadline, and then are evaluated accordingly. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
And so if someone does satisfy that request for a proposal and satisfies the bid, the options available to the town at that point are either to accept that bid and choose among the ones that are satisfying the terms of the request for proposal, or to reject all the bids and begin the process over. And that is the process for using a bidding arrangement, correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Yes.
So the town has satisfied that, working jointly with Bloomington in a cooperative arrangement. And if the alternate bid that this vendor presented was attempting to provide an enticement of a lower fee for a longer extended period of time, it could be construed as an effort on their part to squeeze out the competition for a 10-year period of time. So I fail to see how this is not being fiscally responsible to follow the procedure set forth for a government body that puts something out for bid jointly with a municipal partner, and then is evaluating the bid that satisfied those terms on a take it or leave it basis. And that's what we're being asked to do tonight. So I'm in support of this 2-year arrangement at these prices. And my understanding is that these amounts have already been incorporated into the budget so far. Thank you.
Ms. Lorenz.
Thank you. I want to reiterate that some points that Ms. Smith just said about the importance of promoting competition in the long run. And I want to point out that Mr. Nord has concluded on his own that this will lead to a garbage rate increase. That is not necessarily true. And I believe that that is a false assumption for the reasons that Ms. Smith just said about what we're looking at approving tonight is something that promotes competition. And I just want to make it abundantly clear that we are not talking about raising garbage fees tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Nord.
Thank you. The write-up says that there's a 3% increase annually. So, it does say that it would be. And I'm not making a presumption that the vendor would do anything. I'm just asking that the staff and the council not make the presumption that they would not do anything, and that we look out for the taxpayers and see if we can save them money. So by voting for this without even asking the vendor, I just think we're doing a disservice to to the folks that we all represent and that have been struggling here over this past year financially. Thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate and put a kind of high level on this is I think going out for a competitive bid, working with our friends south of Division Street to negotiate en masse is a great example of the two communities collaborating and working on behalf of the taxpayers. I think that we are. I think we're doing everything we can to get economies of scale, come to the marketplace with a strong bid of two communities. And we are encouraging competition, hopefully to get lower pricing, if that's even possible. We don't even know, as Ms. Lorenz aptly pointed out, there's a bunch of assumptions about what prices are going to be or not going to be. But we all know that competition is good and generally means that we have good competitive rates. And as a small business guy and supporter of local business, I'm in favor of this and what it potentially is doing for the taxpayers. Thanks.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mr. Nord,
No.
Ms. Smith, Ms. Smith, you're
Aye.
muted. Okay.
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye, the resolution is approved. Item E is a resolution authorizing an agreement for employment of the municipal manager. That would be Pamela Reese. Motion for approval, please. Mr. Nord?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Nord?
Here. Just looking through the packet, it says that in the community impact that this is going to be in accordance with the goals identified by the city council. When did we have the discussion to identify the goals for this contract?
Well, Mr. Nord, I think we have those discussions all the time. Last time we had a council retreat, we had that discussion. Last time we had the Citizen Summit that was discussed when we adopted the comprehensive plan. We acknowledged that that there were principles and outcomes of that plan that would be adopted by this council. And so that has been Ms. Reese's guidebook.
Okay, that was well over a year ago, and I didn't know that we had reduced those to writing. But also in the original contract, we were supposed to have a discussion here January 1st. And I don't know that happened. So that's why I ask where this documentation is, because this is my first time seeing it. So give me a little latitude for kind of questioning. Also then, it says in the write-up that that we are going to be approving this contract and then at a later date amend this contract to address compensation and identify the goals and objectives. So this sounds like we're going to be approving a contract before the terms have been fully negotiated. I've got a question for Mr. Day. Mr. Day, in your legal opinion, is it customary for contracts to be signed and then the terms to be negotiated after the signing?
That's not quite what's happening here. It won't be an actual amendment to this document. Under the existing contract, Article 4 of the existing contract, there's supposed to be an annual performance evaluation where compensation and the goals and objectives for the city manager are laid out by the council. For whatever reason, COVID and whatnot, that got pushed back this year. And so that's going to happen at a later date, is my understanding. And those will be addressed. It won't be a formal amendment to this contract. It'll be outstanding issues that'll have to be decided that would normally take place in the annual review.
And I
Okay.
will add to that, that the compensation is the sole discretion of the council. There could be compensation, there might not be compensation increases. That has yet to be determined.
Yeah, just the write-up says that we're going to amend this later. And it just doesn't seem like, well, it seems like we're kind of setting a new precedence to sign a contract without, well, dotting the i's and crossing the t's. This contract doesn't, the existing contract doesn't expire till March. So,
Mr. Nord, you asked the question of Mr. Day if that was an amendment of the contract. He answered that it was not an amendment of the contract. So
Okay.
I would look to the contract and not the narrative of the contract. That may have been not the best choice of words for it, but it's not in the contract to amend.
okay. Then Mr. Day, in your professional legal opinion, is it prudent to sign a contract before all these terms can be negotiated?
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking because the terms are negotiated. Under the contract, there's the annual performance evaluation where these things are decided. They're not, I mean, that's typical in any contract.
Okay, we've got an existing contract. We haven't had an annual compensation discussion on that either.
Actually, we did.
The one that we had before was for the previous year.
And we will have, and it was after the execution of the contract, which is what we'll do this time.
Yeah, you had
And
you had
COVID
one
has-
last year in 2019
Which was for 20,
or early.
which was something that was delayed by the council before I even was elected. It was when you guys had that conversation. Yeah, it just seems awkward that we're doing it this way. And is this in the best interest of the taxpayers to be approving something before we negotiate from a legal point of view?
I think that's a council decision, Mr. Nord.
Well, I'm asking the town attorney.
I think this is a council decision, not. I think Mr. Day has indicated that the process we're doing is not illegal. So it's now back to a council issue.
Oh, I'm not asking about legality of it. I'm just asking from a legal point of view, has this contract been negotiated in the best interest of the taxpayers?
Again, that's a policy decision from the council. That is not a legal decision.
Okay. Then something else that was brought up by the public or by someone in the public was that this contract extends beyond the term of the mayor. And they said that there was some legal rule that says we are not able to tie the hands of future councils. Could you speak to that, Mr. Day?
Yes, I assume by someone in the public, you're talking about Diane Benjamin's blog post of this weekend.
Okay, is there something?
No. She walked through a couple cases on her blog. She quoted a case that was American Utility Auditors versus Village of University Park. In that case, which actually says the exact opposite of what she was arguing, that case, the court held that any statutory restrictions on the term didn't apply because if the term is indefinite and the council can terminate it at any time, which is the same issue we've got with this contract, both of our ordinance, the contract itself, and the state statute all say that these are indefinite term contracts and can be terminated by any time by the council. So the concern about tying future hands is not applicable to the statutory restrictions in this case.
Okay, and then with this contract, something new that's in here is even if the contract is not renewed, there's a, real quick. Even if the contract is not renewed, there's severance. So that's something different than what it was before.
That is true.
Okay, so there's a severance no matter what happens.
No, there's a severance if we terminate the contract or if we do not renew the contract. Those are the two situations where there would be severance, and no, it's not broad-based.
Okay, why is...
In my mind, Mr. Nord, a non-renewal of a contract is a passive termination. A firing is an active termination. The end result is the same.
Why was there this language change? Because the rest of the contract seems similar except for this one piece.
At my suggestion, after a discussion with Ms. Reese.
Mr. Day, what's your legal evaluation on this from, I guess, the perspective of the taxpayers?
Well, I think the mayor's correct in that any non-renewal would be in effect a termination. So if you're not terminating for the purposes that you would have under Article 5 of the contract, it would allow for certain terminations without the benefit, without the separation benefit, unless it's for one of those reasons, then it all pretty much equals the same. It's still a termination of the position.
Well, it's a guaranteed payment then, because if it's not renewed, it's guaranteed. So this is more of a golden parachute clause that's been added. And I'm not in favor of the golden parachute clause. But
It's actually not a golden parachute. And can you hold your thought, Mr. Nord? You've exceeded your 10-minute limit on that. And I'll come back to you if you wish to continue this. Mr. McCarthy?
Thanks, Mayor. I guess starting off at the kind of the top of some of the comments made already is, first, I just want to go on the record saying I disagree with aligning city manager contract renewal to politics and election cycles. Frankly, the city manager role is a professional opinion or position rather. It's, our role is to hire the best person we can to run the town. That's our job. We hire one person and we hire them to run a city. It's not politics. So our choice should be based upon experience and performance, not politics and not election cycles. And it never has been. So I disagree completely with making this about politics and trying to change when we vote on this. I guess second thing I want to say is get this refocused back on what it is. As I guess a little bit of history for those, Mr. Norden and maybe Ms. Smith, who haven't been through this a number of times. This is not the first time this has happened. And so the contract is the contract, as Mr. Day pointed out, that the terms are the terms, and then we do a review on a salary. That's part of the provisions of the contract. Sometimes, when the contract comes up and our review cycles don't line up, we've certainly a number of occasions over the 9 years that I've been involved done it exactly this way, and it's fine. I guess lastly, and most importantly, Mrs. Reese has done an excellent job here, and she and her staff have done a stellar job when you consider how well the town's fared during this pandemic. And so I wholeheartedly support renewing her contract. And I look forward to the opportunity really to do a performance review, because I think that's going to be even a better, more enjoyable conversation in light of her performance. Thanks.
Ms. Smith?
It's my understanding that part of the reason the contract has come up for an amendment is that it is putting the contract in alignment with recent changes to state regulations that limited severance packages from a maximum of 40 weeks to 20 weeks. Is that accurate?
There was a change in the state law that limited severance payments to 20 weeks. I don't believe there was an initial 40-week cap on it. Prior versions of the severance payment for prior contracts for all the managers were 9 months, I believe.
So in essence, the state law mandated that the contract did have to be modified beyond what had been initially agreed. And it's also my understanding that Ms. Reese has been with the town of Normal for 30 years. And in the private sector, I believe it's customary to give 1 week of severance for every year of service. So that the 20 week is even below what someone would achieve in the private sector. And so in a concession, it seems to me only fair that a recognition be given that the end result of either a firing or a non-renewal of contract has the same thing, same effect, that the city manager, despite job performance, would not be in her job anymore. And 20 weeks seems to be a paltry compensation for 30 years of service if in some point in the future politics interferes with the judgment of her job performance. I'm in favor of this amendment.
Thank you. Further on the item? Seeing nothing further, please call the roll.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
You're on mute, Mr. Nord.
No.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The resolution is approved, and before we move on, I will echo what Mr. McCarthy said. Ms. Reese, it's been a pleasure working with you over these years as assistant and deputy city manager and city manager. And I'm not sure you would have signed up for it given what you've been handed the last year, but you did, and you rose to the occasion and have done great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item F is a resolution to accept a bid and approve a contract with Stark Excavating Incorporated in the amount of $375,383.05. And that is for the Maxwell Park OSLAD grant project. Ms. Smith.
I move this item.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Smith.
I just wanted to clarify some items for the record because this is a dramatic reduction in the original bid that was rejected because the cost came in above the $800,000 that had been budgeted for this project, with $400,000 coming from the grant and the town of Normal to match with its own $400,000. If Brian Damry is on the call, or perhaps Ms. Reese, Doug Damry, there he is.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Damry is on the call and has lovely, I believe, Constitution Trail background, perhaps, as his Zoom background, but we are very excited about the bids for the Maxwell Park project. And with council approval tonight, we look forward to moving forward with construction. I'll let Mr. Damry talk about where we're at with the budget, because we have a number of outstanding things yet to come regarding expenses, but those are much smaller, and we'll use up some of that remaining budget. I'll let Mr. Damry explain what we have yet to do.
Well, if he could, please clarify how the cost came down so much. What was cut out of the proposals that went out the second time to get it even under the 400,000 from the grant?
Yeah, so in looking at the original bids that we rejected a year ago, number one, the first thing we did is we looked at taking the parking lot out, which was a pretty significant amount of that project, likely because it's a lot of concrete and it's a lot of square footage. So that we knew we'd save some money there. We also were looking at some of the items that maybe were out of line from our pricing, from what we thought the estimations would be within the bid. And fencing, and we pulled the fencing out, and that bid, we created a separate bid package for that. So that will be coming to you hopefully here in a couple weeks to go with this. So we have, basically, we tried to create a bid package in this bid that kind of looked toward similar trade, so excavation, concrete, sewer, storm sewer, a lot of the stuff, asphalt, a lot of the stuff that kind of goes along the same lines in a similar type of project. We thought, hopefully we create some appeal for some competition and competitive bids. We did not, but we did get a very favorable bid. We feel is a very favorable bid for that work. Now, like I said, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be proposing, or we'll hopefully have a bid to approve for the fencing component of that. And then we have some other items that we pulled out of that scope, of that original bid scope, that include, for example, like the dugouts, some work at the dog park, some other work that we just felt like we could do in-house at a much cheaper rate that would still qualify within the scope of the grant. So by eliminating the parking lot again, we did not just jeopardize the grant in any way, because the parking lot is considered by DNR in this grant program as a non-recreation amenity. It's more of an infrastructure, so it didn't jeopardize our funding at all. So we maintain our entire $400,000 funding with our match of $400,000. So we're still thinking this project's going to come in around $800,000. Estimations by some of our engineers were, our design team was, near that over amount. I forget, the overage amount was, I think, 932,000. Yeah, so the $132,000 less is probably mostly within the parking lot and other savings.
And so by doing some of the work in-house, you won't be paying contractors' costs and overhead and profit to the contractors, but it will satisfy the terms of the grant that Normal is spending $400,000 in a match to the grant dollars, correct?
Correct.
And on some of the improvements that are being made, like the bocce courts and the bago courts that are being put in, will those be designed in such a way to make them ADA compliant so that we can have SOAR participants and others with physical limitations able to use those facilities?
Absolutely. I think the plan was to have and we'll double check the specifications prior to getting this done. But we have, at this point, I think we have like a concrete surface around the game so that individuals with maybe limitations in their walking abilities as well as wheelchairs would be able to get back and forth between the bags and along the bocce ball court. So yeah, we should easily be able to meet that.
So to answer Mr. Ulmer's concerns about parking spaces, at this time, there's no plans to expand the parking spaces beyond the current configuration, correct?
Well, I would say correct. Right now, there is no plans for parking. I think it needs to be addressed, though. That park is one of our, if not our most heavily used park. And the parking, we have 38 spots currently at this location. And when you have softball and cross country and picnics and basketball and the playground and tennis all going on at one time, we handle way more than 38 cars. We end up having a lot of vehicles that pull in into dangerous situations and park in the grass. During cross-country meets, we have them parking out into the neighborhood, and we can address it. So there's a huge need, regardless of we would encourage everybody to walk and run to the parks, but that's not always possible. So I think it still needs to be looked at. One of the things that the parking lot would have addressed, not really in this plan, which is another reason why we pulled it out, but ultimately what we would want to do is we want to get parking a little closer to all those activity items. Right now, it's just kind of, you pull in, you park, and you have to walk to the softball. So it makes it very difficult with people with handicaps and walking, disabilities and wheelchair. So we'd like to make it a little bit more available to them as well. So it needs to be considered here in the near future, I think.
And so are these park facilities sometimes used for competition, where we may even have out of town visitors to the park for these events?
Yeah, Maxwell South baseball and softball diamonds are used pretty heavily with our national tournaments that we host. And we're planning to get that done this year as we host the Northern Nationals late in July. So we're hoping to get that all that work done for that event. And as well, cross country. I mean, we host almost every weekend. We're hosting, and during the week even, hosting not only the normal schools and Bloomington, and even we're even hosting Heartland and Wesleyan. But we host, they come from all over the Central Illinois region, as well as all over the state when we host the IESA event. So yeah, I mean, it's a very, I think it really, the parking lot as well as the cross country course part of it is really going to enhance that event. So yeah.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There on this item? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The resolution is approved. That concludes our omnibus agenda. There were no items of general orders or new business tonight. So we'll go to comments and concerns prior to taking a message or taking a motion for adjournment. And I will start with Ms. Reese. I think she's going to introduce two department heads to talk about a wild ride we all had this weekend. Ms. Reese.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Staff has had quite a bit of discussion today about what our weekend looked like this past weekend. We had basically a weekend unlike any other we've ever had before. And I can't tell you enough how appreciative I am that we have such an exceptional group of public safety officers, very well trained, very professional. And I thought it was very timely that we have a city council meeting tonight which provides us an opportunity to share with you what the weekend was like, how the town responded and such. And so I'm not going to talk too much more. I'm going to ask Chief Humer to give you kind of a summary of what the weekend looked like. I've also asked Police Chief Rick Bleichner to participate as well, but Chief Humer is going to take the lead in the conversation. So Chief.
Thank you, Ms. Reese. And thank you to the council for having me this evening. Ms. Reese is correct. This is probably like no other weekend we've ever had. Starting Saturday morning around 5 a.m., the fire department received a call of a train derailment. And so we responded to that call. And once we got there, we realized that it was a pretty large situation. The original call said that it was a 150 car freight train and that 60 cars came off the rails. And so after our initial units got on the scene and our battalion chief set up command, they realized that it was actually 16 cars that had come off the track, which that's still a pretty good train derailment, obviously. So very concerning, obviously. And then, as we started to work the scene and work the rail lines, we realized that, the majority of the railroad crossings between Fort Jesse Road and Main Street were blocked due to the train derailment. We also, as we walked the cars that had derailed, found that we did not have any tanker cars that were turned over, because one of the things that is most concerning, other than injury or loss of life or anything like that with a train derailment, is hazardous materials. And so that was number one probably on our mind. Do we have any hazardous materials, and are they leaking? Looking for placards, those types of things. And so we were pleased to not find that. We did find 3 power poles that had been sheared off. The lines were still attached and the power was still on as far as we knew, but we didn't know how long it would stay on, or if the trains would shift anymore or anything, and then we would lose power. And it was concerning because of the low temperatures and time of night and that type of thing. So we were concerned about that. Kudos to all of the town staff, administration, the elected officials, that came together that morning to try to help to mitigate this, to send out a cohesive message to the public on what was going on, so that there wasn't, more concern or any type of panic in the community or anything like that. It took about, in working with the railroad, it took about 2.5 hours to clear some of the crossings. And the reason why is that although the crew on the train was not injured or anything, due to policy, whether that be the railroad or the Commerce Commission or whoever oversees that, if there's more than what they believe is $1.5 million worth of damage, that crew must go to the hospital and have blood test and urine test, just as a precaution, as a part of the due diligence. And so before any of the train cars could be moved or anything, they had to bring another crew in from Chicago to come down to do that. And they did that in about 2.5 hours. And so we were able to move a portion of the train north, which cleared several of the crossings. It took a little bit longer to clear the ones to the south because there was more wreckage that was connected to the train and that type of thing. So it took a little longer for that to all be moved and everything. I'm going to go ahead and jump forward a little bit to Sunday and continue to talk about the train derailment a little bit, and then talk about the apartment complex fire that we had separately. But on Sunday morning, we received a call that that there was a fire. 2 of the train cars had caught fire that were laid over at about a 45-degree angle. And when we got there, what we had realized, we had met with the railroad at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we knew what they had done and the work that had taken place overnight. And they had moved several of the cars, picked them up with a large crane and moved them out of the way. And when they did that, they had jostled some of the other cars and moved them around. And it appears that 2 of the semi-tractor trucks that were on flatbed cars had refrigeration units on them, reefer units. And so they run off of diesel fuel, Freon. They have batteries, so they have electrical components and things like that. And what we believe is that there was a saddle tank for diesel fuel that was ruptured, and it caught some kind of ignition source on that trailer and started the fire, which when we arrived, the fire was burning in both of the trailers internally. There were not a lot of flames visible, but it was obvious that the cargo inside both of the trailer cars or tractor trailers was on fire. They were on fire. And so basically what we had to do is we worked with the railroad to use a backhoe to basically peel the skin off the sides of those tractor trailers and then pull the freight that was in those out onto the ground so that we could hose it down, soak it, and then they would stir it around with the backhoe, and we would continue to hose it down. And at some point after about 5 hours, we felt like we had soaked it enough and that it was made safe. And so we cleared the scene. And as a part of that, we did also notice that there was a red coloring in the alleyway that was going down the sewer. And so once we did that, we immediately contacted our sewer department, who contacted the reclamation district, and we traced it down to Sugar Creek. And so the reclamation district went ahead and sampled it and called the EPA, and it turned out to be a water soluble paint product. And so that it was fairly inert, that wouldn't hurt humans or have a fish kill or any type of thing like that. However, it did stain the snow and the water, but it was dissipating at that time. We tried to put some hazardous material booms or pigs in the water, and but the top of the water was frozen, and everything was running underneath the ice, and so we didn't have any way to capture that or do anything with that. So the decision was made by the reclamation district to just let it flow, and then it would go ahead and flow out through their facility. And I guess some of the concerning thing for some of the neighbors was there was some coloring on the snow that had been left over from that or whatever. But once the snow melts and everything like that, it'll be made safe. And then again, the railroad was there with their hazardous materials people today and resampled it, made sure everything was okay, and things are still fine with that. So there's really no cause for concern for that. So that is kind of the train derailment. I mean, I just can't say how much, we appreciate all the other departments, department heads, local merchants, people who brought us coffee and water and pizza and just all those kind of things. It really is appreciated when things are so cold, because obviously we all know how cold it was, or it has been for the last couple of days, and it was greatly appreciated. So do you want me to take any questions about the derailment,
Well,
and then move on?
If I could jump in, Chief, and just indicate that,
Sure.
for certainly we all are aware that not only did we just have one incredible crisis, a major catastrophe in terms of a freight train derailment in Uptown, but then we were faced with a second crisis on the very same day. And so, Chief, before we turn it over and talk just about the train derailment or answer questions, I would really appreciate you kind of giving a summary of what happened then later on Saturday, because then I think it puts into perspective for council and others what your department was faced with, what public safety was faced with, and the value of our mutual aid agreements, and certainly the value of the training and professionalism of the department. So, Chief.
Sure, absolutely. Well, while we were still working with the railroad and the Ameren and multiple others, ISU, about I think about 1:25 that afternoon, we received a call of a possible structure fire on South Linden Street at the Sugar Creek Apartments. And 9 out of 10 times, it's food on the stove or something like that. I mean, automatic alarm or whatever. But it became obvious when the 911 center received multiple calls of a fire there. That's usually a good indication that it's actually something that's happening. And so when our initial units got on the scene, they had heavy smoke coming from the third floor, from 2 apartments on the third floor, and they tried to make entry and to have an offensive attack to try to put the fire out. And it became very clear that the fire had grown past the interior attack because it had made its way through the roof, and the flames were shooting up about 20 feet in the air over the tops of their heads. So they had to back out, and we had to go into a defensive mode. And so what we did, obviously, is we put up our aerial device and started to flow water. We had called for mutual aid right away. We called for, obviously, the city of Bloomington, Danvers, Dale Township, Hudson, Carlock, Towanda, and Bloomington Township were all the mutual aid departments that responded either to the scene or helped us to backfill our stations. So at one point, we had 4 aerial devices up in the air flowing 1,000 gallons apiece, and plus several 2.5-inch lines on the ground. Obviously, it was very, very cold that day. We kept rotating our staff out in 15-minute intervals to try to keep people warm. Tried to continue to bring new gloves and things like that. Once they got wet, people aren't able to handle the hose lines or do anything like that. And so from start to finish, that call started about, like I say, 1:30 in the afternoon or whatever. And our investigators and our last fire crew left there at 1:30 in the morning once everything was safe. That building was built prior to sprinkler code, so the building was not sprinkled. It did have 2 fire stops on each end of the building, which helped us tremendously to stop the fire. If it hadn't been for that, we probably would have burned another 12, I would imagine, just because of the intensity of the fire and the fire load in the building. So, and there again, immediately called the water department, had them fire the pumps up to make sure that we had plenty of water. We had a broken hydrant. The water company was there in like 10 minutes to help us. We were on probably 4 or 5 different hydrants at some point around the building. And, hundreds and hundreds of feet of large diameter hose that was all frozen that we had to load on trailers to take back to the station and lay on the floor and put salamander heaters on them to heat them enough to then hang them in the hose tower. The ladder truck, when we initially tried to bring it down, it was so frozen, even though we continued to try to flow some water through it. It was so frozen that we couldn't get it back into the cradle and we couldn't retract it. So we called a mechanic. He actually lives here in town, who works on our apparatus. He actually works over in Washington, Illinois, but actually lives here. And he came down and assisted us in manually lowering that ladder truck. And then we drove it back to the station with about 75 feet or 100 feet out in front of us. Got it back into the station, covered it with tarps and put salamanders under it and thawed it out. And we were able to retract it and then get it fully back into the building. But so that lets you know how cold things were that day, that night, or whatever. So that's
certainly a great summary, Chief. Thank you for sharing that. So council, as you know, and because I shared some information by email over the weekend, and certainly as indicated by Chief Humer, a lot of departments played or support role on both Saturday and Sunday. Saturday in particular because of the 2 major catastrophes in one day. So it was very much a team effort. And we'll be happy to answer any questions council might have.
So, Council, I've got 4 hands up, and I'm not sure if that's for questions or for concerns. So why don't you lower your hands and we'll start over again. Thank you. And Mr. McCarthy was first up.
I think I know the answer to this, but I'm just going to ask it out loud just to make sure, because a lot happened since I had the opportunity to see both chiefs on Saturday morning. All of our people were unharmed and safe during all of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things that that we're most pleased about, that, you know, we really didn't have any injuries at all. Everybody's doing well. No injuries on the train, no injuries at the of the tenants from the fire building or any of our personnel.
Good. Just amazing kudos to your professionalism and all the coordination that had to happen on Saturday morning. I guess just while we're having this conversation, I'll say now what I was going to say some later. But first, I'm really thankful that nobody got hurt. Obviously, that's first and foremost, and you know, that's what the community asked you guys to do, and just a wacky, crazy, once in a lifetime weekend. You guys did that extremely well and extremely professionally. So I'm grateful for that, and thankful that you and your teams are the ones who are leading safety in our community. You ought to be extremely proud of your work and the work of your teams. And I know our entire community is very grateful that you guys are on the watch. I guess a little extension while we're having this conversation is, you know, I know both chiefs understand this and our operations departments too, as well, but I believe it's an opportunity to remind ourselves that, you know, our emergency and operation teams need our support, council support, in the facilities and equipment and training that they ask for. So when stuff like this happens, which hopefully nothing like this ever happens again in normal, but when it does, you know, they're equipped and ready to do their jobs. And so, you know, while we're having this discussion, let's also remind ourselves that, you know, we as a council, you know, these folks, these brave men and women need our support every day, every decision, every vote. And I appreciate all of that. And Chief Bleichner as well. Thank you. I know your guys were all over the place and girls were all over the place, trying to keep everybody safe. And the coordination of blockages and moving traffic around the city, I knew was fluid as it worked. And your department's communications out to the public was fantastic, trying to keep everybody up to date of what was open, what the status was, and what was going on, and try to keep up with that all day. But just amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to belabor on too many points, and Mr. McCarthy really hit on a question I was going to ask, only for stressing the fact that there were 0 injuries and no fatalities, speaks to the level of training and our ability and capability of being amazing. You know, I thank you. I just needed to take this time to thank you all. And you're right, Mr. McCarthy. This is why we have to make those very important decisions so that our first responders have all that they need, whether that be in training, whether that be in equipment, whether that just be in the support from their council. And so, you know, I am just so grateful that we have you all, and for all of your staff, and those who stayed the course, because it was a long weekend. It was grueling because of the weather. And that was not missed upon me by no means. And so I am just so proud to be able to say that we have you all on our staff working hard and working for the betterment of our community and the safety of our community.
Thank you.
Ms. Lorenz?
A question for Chief Humer. Did I see in today's news feed somewhere that there was yet another fire that flared up in the train derailment area?
Sure. Yeah, we were back down there this morning. We were only there about 40 minutes, and it was the stuff that we had pulled out of those train cars. Like I said, it's basically like a junk fire, you know. I mean, it's just a combination of pallets and paper goods and Hardee's bags and, you know, just all kinds of stuff that was in there. And so no matter how much we kind of stirred it up with the backhoe and hosed it down or whatever, that we did have another flare up, you know, this morning and everything like that. But we met with the company that has been hired to haul all that away, and their plan is, weather permitting, they're coming from Missouri, but they're going to supposedly have their equipment here tomorrow morning first thing, and start to load all that up and haul it all off to the landfill, so that it'll be gone, so it won't be an issue or a problem, and it won't be around for weeks and weeks or anything like that. And I'm sure the people that live in those apartments right there will be happy to hear that as well. But it sounds like if everything goes okay, weather permitting, that by, you know, tomorrow afternoon, most of that, what I would call garbage, is going to be gone.
Okay. Well, I'll just finish up with, thank you for that update. And I'll just finish up with a sentiment that I received today via text from somebody who's a Normal resident and also actually a business owner in Normal. And this person said, I, for one, cannot be more grateful for all the services the town of Normal is currently providing. Train derailment, multi-fires, and now winter roads. They are busy, and I, for one, couldn't be more appreciative. So to Normal Fire, Normal Police, and certainly the Public Works who are out, I'm sure, still battling the roads. Thank you.
Mr. North.
Thank you. As first, there are some businesses that did help. I think it would be nice if at some point the town could put out a list of all the businesses that helped, so that way the community knows that this was a community effort, and, you know, so they can show their appreciation, and so we can show their appreciation for, you know, helping, because every little small bit helps, and that's what makes a community. So Ms. Reese, if you could put something together and talk with all the different parties involved to see if we can't get a complete list of, you know, the local businesses that helped.
Sure, I will do that, Mr. Nord. I think McLean County EMA has tracked that, because a lot of people donated directly to EMA, and that certainly was a benefit to the Normal Police Department and Fire Department and all of our staff that were working that day, in addition to the Union Pacific and Ameren and others that were working on the scene. So we'll coordinate with them.
Okay, thank you. And then, so with this effort, is there going to be recoupment of costs that UP will be paying for all the town expense?
Sure. We've started to put together a detailed list of all of our overtime, any equipment used, any equipment broken, anything like that. Mr. Hune has set up a special account for us to go ahead and list all that information in. And so I assume that once everything starts to be settled, that the Union Pacific will work with the town to help us to recoup those costs.
Okay, and this will go across fire administration, all the different departments?
It should cover everything, you know, water overtime, or, you know, a lot of probably streets, that type of thing. You know, they were out there with barricades right away for us, that type of thing. And so we'll work with all the department heads to get a very detailed list of everything that we used or any overtime that was committed to it.
Right.
Sure.
We'll treat it like every other emergency situation, and we track our how we've addressed it.
Yeah, well, this will be a good test because we don't, from my understanding, we don't track like how staff's time's used. So maybe we can use this to kind of figure out something that we can use going forward for other projects as well. And other than that, I guess one more thing before I go. So with all the water that was sprayed out there, there'll probably be some issues that may show up later with like ground heaving and going under pavement. So before we close out any claim, I guess I'd recommend, we wait to see what happens here come summertime and see what the full impact is. But you guys probably see this all the time, so probably not telling you something you don't already know. But thank you guys very much for everyone that was involved.
Thank you. I like your background.
Oh, yes, I'm going to talk about it here after we're all done, too. This is one of my favorite pictures in town.
Okay.
Mr. Preston.
Thanks, Mayor. Boy, if there was ever a question as to the incredible value and the vital importance that local government plays in our everyday lives, I think that that was on full display this weekend. And Chief, I'm sure that you and your team, and Pam, you and your team and a number of others are probably exhausted physically and mentally. I can only imagine how long of a weekend it's been for all of you. And without the level of professionalism and competence of the public servants that you guys work with every day, the rest of us and the citizens of Normal and the people who drive here and shop here and everything else could have had a much different experience this weekend. So I think it's kind of a miracle that between the train derailment, then the fire over at Sugar Creek, followed by the fire then back at the train derailment, that there were no injuries, let alone anything worse. It is just, it really is kind of miraculous. And thank you to all who were involved and will continue to be. Thanks for taking care of us and taking care of the town.
And Ms. Smith. You're on mute.
I hesitated because I didn't know if anyone else was going to address this, but I had come in to see for myself and get an update on what was going on, and saw the city manager and the assistant city manager and Chief Humer and Chief Bleichner working together to make sure everything was coordinated. I was getting emails from because I'm on the ISU mailing list, and their emergency operations was going into full mode. But I was just thoroughly impressed with the coordination that was taking place to make sure that everybody was informed and that the people that needed to be taking care of an item were doing so. And I know Saturday was a long day for a lot of staff, and I so appreciate that. And it doesn't look like it's letting up, as they used to say in the old cartoon. Friday the 13th came on a Saturday this year. So it wasn't a lot of fun, but something I found out about that the city administration had contact information for businesses to keep them informed about the possibility of power losses, that with everything else running the risk that restaurants could have lost power to their refrigeration units, and every effort was made to make sure that the correct contact person was notified to take whatever corrective action was taken. So this behind the scenes effort that was taking place to make it all seem so seamless. Just kudos to everyone, and I hope everybody gets a chance to get some rest this week. So thank you all.
So I'll make one observation, again, echoing what everyone on council has said. Thank you for the work that you did this weekend. You know, I was there most of the day, Saturday, observing all this and out on the sites, taking a peek at things, and it was really cold out there. And the wind chill was something. But what was impressive, I mean, you had fire, police, public works, EMA, ISU people, Ameren people, Union Pacific people. I was just so impressed by how professional and communicative and how everybody really gelled as a team to get this situation under control. It was just really, really a testament to your professionalism, your training, that everybody was cooperating and working together, and it was very, very obvious watching all these different agencies and departments on the scene and how well they work together. So just amazing, and kudos for that as well. So Chiefs, thank you for being here on that. And yes. Other comments or concerns? Ms. Cummings, then Ms. Smith, and then Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just really brief. One, I wanted to certainly also, in my closing comments for the night, to give a shout out to the Children's Discovery Museum. They always hold a very special place in my heart, and I was just so elated to see them receive the awards, and certainly a shout out to Miss Shelley Hanover. I know all the work she's done over the years for the museum, and so was proud to see that. And what's most important, that this is a museum in our community, and so I am so glad to see that. Last but not least, this is the last meeting we'll have before the end of the month, and this is Black History Month. Typically in the past, since I've been on council, we've hosted either a movie or worked with the library to put out a listing of books, encouraging the community to become aware and be culturally more culturally sensitive. I believe a culturally sensitive community is a culturally educated community. And so I encourage you, even though there's been nothing we've hosted this year, that you do take it upon yourself to educate yourself and become aware of the different cultures within this community. Also, what has been stated before is communities that will thrive in the future are communities that are more welcoming and more diverse, and especially culturally diverse. So until we can be able to be educated, to be able to be welcoming, truly welcoming, I ask that you all begin to change your mindset and educate yourself. Everyone have a good night.
Ms. Smith.
Yes, the cold does continue to be an issue. And I just wanted to remind everybody in your neighborhood, if you know of neighbors who live alone or elderly that might struggle, as you're clearing a driveway, and you might want to make sure you check on them, make sure everything's okay. Thankfully, we haven't had any power outages here, but just a reminder to look out for one another. And there is a parking ban, so Public Works can get the streets cleared. So please do try to get your cars off the streets so that the Public Works Department can clear not just the main roads, but the side roads. But stay safe.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah, I just want to echo a little of what Ms. Smith said. Ironically, the plows literally just went by my window. Just a shout out to all the crews out there right now and through the night and tomorrow. Thank you for all you're doing. I know you've got a long day or two ahead of you, but thanks for what you're doing tonight, and we'll continue to. Please be safe out there. Also, I just wanted to lend my voice and say congratulations to Shelley and the whole CDM team. Wow, to be able to take a really crazy pandemic and be creative and go after cool, innovative programs that are recognized universally as great stuff, and how thoughtfully and creatively you serving our community is really a testament to your hard work. Thanks for that. And lastly, I just want to say congratulations to Ms. Reese and Mr. Hune and all the staff working on receiving another AAA bond rating. You know, in light of a pandemic, all the pandemic-driven financial challenges we've had, right? This shows normal residents that, you know, the town's financial position is very strong. And that's a direct result of the work of Ms. Reese and Mr. Hune and all of the department heads and staff. And you know, it's great. It's great news in a very challenging time. So thanks for all of that. Have a good night, everybody.
And I'm just going to add on to what you said there, Mr. McCarthy. It was interesting to read their comments because they very, very accurately mirrored the discussions we've had and the decisions we've had to make over the last couple of years. It was like reading a playbook of what we've done for the last year or two. Mr. Nord.
Thank you. First, wanted to talk about the picture that I've got for my background. This is a mural here at one of our local businesses. But like, whenever you look at it, we've got the building back here that's on fire. So just by looking at it, we don't know if the goal for the fire departments, which we've got Bloomington, this is Normal right here, and Bloomington over here on this side. So this was actually painted for our community, but they're together working on some common problem. And the building behind us, we don't know what that problem is or what the goal is. So before they can actually work together and accomplish whatever their goal is, they have to decide what that problem is. You know, are they, and what they're trying to accomplish. Are they trying to save the building? You know, someone could look at it and say, hey, we want to save the building. Well, someone else may be looking at it saying, hey, no, the priority is we want to save the lives in the building. There's a completely different methodology to what the firemen are going to do if they're trying to save the building or save the lives. Or, you know, maybe this is a training event, you know, and then it could be something different, but they cannot work together until they know what they're going to be doing and what they're trying to accomplish. So once they do that, and once we do this, then we have a much better chance of overcoming any common problem that we have between our two communities, or even just working together. You know, first we have to identify what's our goal, then come together, work, and the problem just becomes so much easier to overcome. So I wanted to show that. Then I also wanted to show something else. So this is something here in there we go. So what this is the water system. Blue is Bloomington's water system. Green is Normal's water system. Now, this is the water system as you look over top of Rivian. And I wanted to show this because this is a place where the communities had worked together to build something, and they put this infrastructure in. So you can see Bloomington actually serves Rivian, and there's blue lines going up in there. And then Normal kind of goes to the east and then up to the north. Well, what we're doing is let me switch pictures. So here is the next picture, I think.
Mayor, while we're talking about this, I guess certainly I can see if Mr. Burkhart's able to join the call if we're going to talk about Normal's water service, and maybe council wants to talk about the metro zone. I'm not sure where we're going with this, but you know, we've talked about our study on the west side many times. So
Sure, this
Um,
isn't a study. I'm waiting for the
Before we
screen
go
to
any
pop up.
further, before we go any further on this, the council had an agreement that we weren't going to bring previously made decisions forward in concerns.
Well,
And
this
it's
isn't a
really
previously
inappropriate what
made
you're
decision.
you're bringing forward here, Mr. Nord. I think you're going to talk about.
I don't know. I guess I'll jump in, Mayor. Maybe he's just talking about things we've already said. Bloomington already serves water to the Rivian plant. Normal has water on the north side of the Rivian plant. You see it there. Our water lines go down Electric Avenue. We've said that in the council report. We've said that in various meetings. I've said that in countless emails.
Sure.
And we're preparing. Is this a question where we need to talk about the water study again?
No, this is just my council comments. This isn't something for discussion. The mayor's already said that this is not the time for discussion, so I'm taking my time just to show something. So now this red line that's here, this is $5 million extension that we're putting in that we have not, that is on the proposed budget. I don't know if it's coming off, but I wanted people to see exactly what it was we were putting in and where my concern was. So that red line is right there. So what additional property does this serve?
Mr.
I
Nord,
just don't see where this is. If there's property to the west, then they could either choose to connect to Normal at the north or Bloomington at the south, but that property is not annexed in. And I just think we need
Mr. Nord, Mr. Nord, we've already had this discussion, and that's not the point of council concerns.
Mayor,
this is a concern of mine, and I didn't realize that I had to get my concerns pre-approved before I brought them up. I thought I just had time to speak and I had the
We've
floor.
had long discussions about revisiting issues that were voted on. There have been actions taken to do a study out here, and we're done. Ms. Reese, you had a comment?
Yes, I guess I would suggest Mr. Nord has brought up this issue many times since we had our council agenda item, and it was approved by the majority of council. I've explained, certainly that screen is no surprise. 3 of Bloomington's highest water users, I believe, are located within the town of Normal. So we can certainly talk about the impact to Normal customers by a large water users being in Bloomington's system. That's a great discussion we could have. But in regard to the water study, we have said many times, Mr. Nord, that the value to study the system is for preparing it for economic growth. And like many things, when we prepare for growth, it involves possible annexation. So, in preparation for growth, and we all know that many good things are happening with the Rivian project right now. It would seem, I think in one of my past emails, I basically indicated that staff would be remiss if we suggested to council that we stick our heads in the sand and not prepare for economic growth. So, and we also, as I have shared, like to prepare and come in with budgets that that we think are reasonable. And so we have included funds in the budget for a possible water extension. That study is not done yet, but as we've experienced in 2020, as recently as 2020, the town is positioned very well for grant opportunities when we have shovel-ready projects. So perhaps, Mayor, that maybe you and your council colleagues can talk about, since this is an issue that continues to be raised time and time again by various emails and such with Mr. Nord, and trying to pass along why this even makes sense to the town of Normal and Normal water customers to prepare for growth. Maybe it's something that we should set aside as an agenda topic in the future or a work session, because clearly there's some continued confusion on why this would be why this particular water extension would be very impactful in a positive way for the town of Normal.
Can I finish my council comments?
No, you may not, Mr. Nord. You exceeded your time limit.
I have been interrupted. Ms. Reese used up most of the time. Now is my time going to be counted by the other folks that are speaking?
You were over your time limit before Ms. Reese said anything.
I-
We had agreed on a 5-minute time limit in discussion. Ms. Lorenz?
When was this
you have a
policy
comment?
made?
I actually contacted you and all the other council members and said, this was my plan for discussion, and if you disagreed with it, to let me know. You did not do so.
So a policy was made in
council
secret
member-
outside of the public
council
eye?
member- Mr. Nord, we're done. Ms. Lorenz, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I really just can't let Mr. Nord get the last word on this. We do need to have a session whereby we explain to him the Metro Zone and the history of the Metro Zone and why we even have a blue line going to Rivian, a decision made some 30, maybe even 35 years ago. And Mr. Nord, Bloomington unilaterally withdrew from the Metro Zone, costing our town and our taxpayers $1 million. So had that Metro Zone never been put in place, we wouldn't be having a blue line there. We would have put a green line there because Mitsubishi then was in Normal. So perhaps we need to have a history lesson for you on that. And then finally, your continued beratement of this idea of us being, of it being somehow foolhardy that we are looking into being shovel ready for property to be developable. I find kind of interesting given the fact that Rivian is arguably one of the hottest companies in America. And so it would be foolhardy on our part if we weren't doing this study. And it would be a dereliction of our duty to our taxpayers if we weren't doing this study. And frankly, it will help our taxpayers to bring on additional commercial users of our water system to lower the rates for everybody, for all taxpayers. We have gone over this numerous times, but we, and I, for one, will take more of my time, and I'm sure our colleagues will do the same, to have this educational session for you again. But I am not going to let you have the last word on that. Thank you.
So we're getting away again from what the intention of council concerns and comments were. Just to reiterate, we'd agreed that we'd hold our comments to 5 minutes, one round, and that we would not revisit issues that had been voted on by the council or use this area as an area to bring up issues other than to bring awareness to something in the community. We've gotten far afield in terms of what the original intent of council comments and concerns were. It's not rebuttal time.
Mayor Coos, if I could just ask Mr. Nord, because I can't see council right now, if you could potentially not share your screen, so just for the audience to be able to see council.
And Mr. McCarthy, you had your hand up. Did you? Please don't continue this discussion if that.
No, I was going to ask Mr. Nord to stop sharing his screen.
Thank you.
And ask that as a council, that's highly inappropriate, and I refrain from a point of order, but for a council member just to go off the reservation and grab the screen and start sharing it is highly unprofessional and highly out of order for our normal conduct in this meeting. And I'm a little dismayed by that. And I would just like us all to agree to our typical code of conduct in a meeting and just remind everybody that, this is a professional meeting and we're here conducting a professional meeting and a business meeting. And I don't want to get point counterpoint, Mayor, but I just highly unusual and hope we can get back to normal decorum and normal respectful behavior in the meeting. Thank you.
I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
No.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. We are adjourned. Stay warm out, everybody. Not too much shoveling, we hope. Good night.